You know, the letter to the Hebrews was a letter written or inspired by the Spirit of God, written to address a group of Jewish believers. And by saying Jewish believers, what I mean by that is people who all their lives had been raised in Judaism, who had lived under the Mosaic covenant, who had practiced all the sacrificial requirements or sacrificing requirements and eating restrictions and so many other things that were part of the Mosaic covenant. That they were people who grew up, born and raised, as we would say, under that system. And fortunately for them, they lived at the beginning of a time when the gospel, the new covenant, of Jesus Christ and mercy and grace and forgiveness that's afforded through the sacrifice of Christ, while that new covenant certainly applied to those who had lived previously, the blood of Christ flowed backward to cover their sins who lived by faith as well. But they lived in a time when that gospel message was proclaimed most clearly for the first time, the more full and complete revelation beginning in Acts chapter 2, as the story's told, or as the history's revealed. But they were fortunate enough to live in a time when the gospel was being proclaimed, and the message of the gospel in essence said that all the shadowy representations of the previous covenant, the Mosaic covenant, the law of Moses as we refer to it, that all the shadowy representations contained in the law of Moses or the Mosaic covenant are now fulfilled in the life and the person and the ministry of Christ. And that the only logical response to that new covenant being offered, that relationship under the covenant of Christ, is for us to demonstrate faith, is for us to respond in submission and obedience to that. Not to continue practicing the symbolism of the old covenant, but to worship God under an entirely new understanding and a new covenant relationship. And while these believers or these former Jews, these people who'd grown up under that old economy or old covenant system, while they professed their faith and they in fact became New Covenant, New Testament believers, they became Christians, followers of Christ. They were still living in an environment where the temple was still standing and the sacrifices were still being performed, and their families were still participating in all the ritual and symbolism of the old covenant, and they were tempted to go back